Hi, this is Ofori, the digital reader, and this is part 2 of the books that I bought in March. Like I said, in March, I was a bad boy, and I bought like 20. I'm not bought, but I got like 20 new books. And because I'm not saying bought all of them, because a good number of books that I get from the Gutenberg Project, which are books that are out of copyright and they're just free. So I can't really say I bought those books. So these are what I can consider new books. So I guess I'll go ahead and start off. Most of these books I just kind of bumped into or thought about. Part 1, a lot of the books in part 1 were from booktuber recommendations. Specific booktuber, well, 2 booktubers, but I couldn't remember the second one's name. But the one booktuber who I watch quite a bit is Kalila, and most of those books were from her recommendations. These books are kind of stuff that I was thinking about or I saw, but I never really bothered with because it just wasn't something I thought I would be interested in a way that, I used to just kind of read books I could kind of like enjoy kind of like on a fast food level and just blow through. Since I've started this channel, I've really been stretching myself and reading books I would have never read, just because generally I was about bubblegum action, superhero bubblegum action, quick, fast-paced, Bob's your uncle. Now I'm reading books that, are a little bit different. And I say all that to say, I'm going to reread, I basically got 2 books that are biographies, and I don't read biographies, never read biographies, and 2 of these are actually in my TBR. So the first is the Father of Spin. Father of Spin is it's a biography of Edward L. Bernays, and he's basically the person who kind of invented public. He invented advertising the way most modern people do advertising now. He basically created the modern breakfast so that he could sell orange juice and stuff like that. So he basically did a whole bunch of stuff that kind of is the underpinning of modern advertising. And so I saw something quick on YouTube about him years ago, and somebody talked about the book, but I was interested in watching the YouTube video, which was very interesting. But at the time, I was just like, I ain't going to read the book. I'm going to read the book now. This is my jam. It will always be my jam. And this is the kind of books I read before I started this channel all the time. So this is based off of the Shadowrun universe. And the Shadowrun universe is based off of a role-playing game. And the Shadowrun universe is basically high fantasy meets cyberpunk. So it's kind of like if you took D&D and World of Warcraft and you mashed it with cyberpunk. You would have orcs with cybernetic attachments. You would have dragon presidents. You would have people who are going into the web and have to use technology and magic there. So it's a really, really cool world. Just one of those incredible worlds. And they have a ton of books. And this is good action, fantasy, cyberpunk. This is just I have a ton of these books, and I used to read these books all the time. So every month I pick up one, because most of the time they're like shorter stories or novellas. So Shadow Dance by Aaron Rosenberg. My second biography is Agatha Christie. I have been trying also to read some more mystery and detective stories. Well, start reading some mystery and detective stories, because I loved watching mysteries and detective stories on TV, still do. Love the Agatha Christie series on Acorn TV or BritBox, but that Agatha Christie series is also on Hulu. So I love mysteries, love the Agatha Christie mysteries. And I just was like, she is like third on the list of most well-known authors on the planet Earth. I mean, it's the most well-known books. It's the Bible, Shakespeare, and her. And I was just like, my gosh, she is so prolific, so well-known, so famous. I mean, I can't remember a year, and I'm old. I'm old. I'm easily over 5 decades, and I can't remember a year that came out that there was not an Agatha Christie movie that somebody was making somewhere. When you're that famous that every year a movie from one of your books comes out, I just was curious about her life. So I bought this biography. I'm going to read it. Want to know more about her life. So this is The Lies of Locke Lamora. This is the second book in the Gentleman Bastard series, the Tales of Locke Lamora. And I was watching a YouTuber, Murphy, let me check, I believe her name is Murphy Napier. Yeah, Murphy Napier. And she said this was her favorite book series. So I was like, wow, that's, considering she's a pretty well-known booktuber and she's pretty prolific in her reading, I was like, she didn't mince words. So I was like, man, if this is her favorite series, I got to check it out. And I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was looking for a replacement in my heart and mind for The Stainless Steel Rat by Harry Harrison, who is also a gentleman bastard, or I like to call him a gentleman rogue. And this book, The Lies of Locke Lamora, the first book, I thoroughly enjoyed. So I was like, whoop, bought the second book. I'm definitely going to buy the third book as soon, if I have enough in my buffer. I mean, not my buffer, but if I am able to. I mentioned this in the first part 1, but I'll mention it in part 2 again. That basically, I went a little overboard with books in March, and to clean that up a bit, I've gonna come up with this way to challenge myself, which is I'm basically only going to allow myself to buy books that are half of what I read the month before. So if I read 4 books the month before, I will allow myself to buy 2 books. If I read 6 books the month before, I will allow myself to buy 3 books. And that way I can actually start bringing down my library instead of just always buying books and never being able to kind of get through the library that you have. Now, admittedly, for me, a huge library is nowhere near the problem it is for other booktubers. And that's because all my stuff is digital and my huge library fits on a flash drive, fits on 2 CDs. So space really isn't a problem, but there's just so many books that I have that I haven't read that I wanted to read at some point, I guess, because I bought or I got the book from Gutenberg. So anyway, I bought the second in the series. I thoroughly enjoyed the first book. I can't wait to read the second, and I can't wait to read the third. The next is the third book in the Lady Sherlock series. I'm going to tell you right now, out of everything I have read this year, and I believe I am 16 or 17 books in, the Lady Sherlock series is just my jam. The best way I can put it is this. Every month I'm going to read one of these because this is my treat. The Lady Sherlock series I enjoy so much, it's like a treat to me. So I can always have a good month. I'm going to read one of these at the beginning of the month most of the time. Pretty much, And so basically what I did is I went out and bought some more. I bought the third in the series, which I'm going to be reading this month. Actually, I'm reading now. I bought the third, fourth, and fifth books in the series. And, if I'm reading enough books, then I'm definitely going to finish off this series. I believe there's 3 more books in the series. There's a 6th book, the 7th book, and they're coming out with an 8th book this year, which, once again, I will be interested in. Now, I'm limiting myself to how many books I can buy a month, but I'm not too stressed about that as far as, well, how am I going to keep track of this and what? Because basically any book I want to read goes on my Amazon wish list. And my Amazon wish list can be hundreds of books. It can be any length. Not only is it going on my Amazon wish list, but I have a program called UpNote that keeps all sorts of lists and notes and stuff like that. And I use this program to also keep track of all the books that I have. Not the books that I have, but all the books that I want to read, so that I'm not under this, if I don't get it now, I'll forget. I just put it on the wish list, and when I need books, I just go to the wish list. I would like to buy 1 new book every month. And when I say new, I mean, a newish author, but I'll see how that goes. Next book I got was War of the Scaleborn. I'm a big fan of the World of Warcraft fiction books, and this is the latest one that's come out. So I'm not completely caught up with the World of Warcraft fiction books. I believe I'm 2 books before this one, but those are books that at some point I hope to read. More than likely it'll be late 2024 or maybe 2025, but anytime they're going to come out with a book, it's going on my wish list. I also bought The Winter King. I'm starting to come up with 5 book recommendations for things like Gentlemen Rogues, for things like hero fiction, things like ripping action, things, 5 that I would recommend things. And one of the book recommendations of 5 I'm coming up with is different takes on classic mythology. So in part 1, I have a different take on Indian classic mythology, and I bought The Winter King because that is a different take on Arthurian mythology. So I read The Winter King in March, talk about that in the books I read, and as soon as I read that book, I picked up the second book. These books, for me at least, are weighty, heavier reads, so I'm probably not going to read one every month, but every couple months I will probably read one. I mean, luckily there's only 3, and when I say luckily, I mean, they're heavier reads for me, so I don't know if I would read one every single month, because I guess the best way I can put it is, and I'll talk about it when I talk about the books I read, but reading this book took a lot out of me in a good way. And I want to save some bandwidth some months to just read a whole bunch of light books. And like I said, I bought the sequel, Enemy of God, and I will definitely at some point be picking up the 3rd book. So those are all of the books I acquired in March. Like I said, there's a part 1. This is part 2. I did go hard, 20 books, but I probably won't ever go that hard again now that I have this new thing. More than likely, now going forward, it's usually going to be anywhere from 1 to 3 books I'm going to allow myself to pick up a month, depending on what I did last month. So this is Zoe Murray, the digital reader, and keep reading, y'all.